Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we will be reviewing the album, and excuse me if I don't say this correctly, but we're going to be reviewing the album The Parallax 2 Future Sequence by the band Between the Buried and Me. Yes! And I'll see you all after the intro.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
This is a long album, okay? It's not a double album, I wouldn't say. I think it clocks in at about 1 hour and 12 minutes. But it is long, and what I have to say, it felt a lot longer. Now, from all of this album, I've gathered a few bits which I think are the best bits from this album from a first listening standpoint, so I'm going to share them with you right now, so enjoy. This album is a progressive metal album. Now, we've already listened to one of those albums. We've listened to Lazarus Bird by the band Burst. And if you remember correctly, I did not like that album all that much. I wasn't fond of it. I think it could have done a lot of things better, and I think it was pretty stale and repetitive, and it was just basic metal music. Now, that is to say, metal music is very intricate and interesting of itself, but I didn't think and I didn't find it to be very progressive. This album, however, is really progressive. It is metal. Nothing I'm gonna say will doubt that. I'm saying that this is a metal album, and as a person who's not a metalhead, I think this album is a great segue into the world of metal rock. And of course, if you're a metalhead, you probably love this album. And if you're a metalhead that doesn't know this album, then you should know it because it's really, really, really good. One of the reasons I think this album really hits the right spot is just the fact that it doesn't rely only on the basic metal probes to actually do its thing. So I think that a lot of metal music, they really rely on death growls and heavy distorted instruments and stuff like that you really expect to find in metal music. But this album really doesn't do that much of that. Well, it does some of it, but I think it can do the absolute contrary to that. So this album might also have those heavy parts and really, really intense parts, but it can also introduce a lot of different ideas and themes and styles of music and emotion and a lot of different things into the album itself. It has some very, very mellow parts and very light parts, and it has some of those fun parts and stuff you wouldn't really typically associate with metal music. And I just find that to be great. It actually helped me to enjoy the experience of listening to this album a lot more because I could somewhat relate to the music that I was listening to. And I think a great and a big thing that really emphasizes how good the Between the Buried and Me are as a band, and actually how good they are at bridging those two ideas together, is none other than their vocalist. So Tommy Giles Roger Jr. is the vocalist for this album specifically. I don't know if he's with the band in other albums, but what he does on this one is truly magnificent because he can do the death growls, and he does them so well. They're so intense, they come from within, and I think it's really interesting. But then he goes on to sing those shallow parts, those really quiet sections, and with that tone and that range, I think this album just blows my mind. So another thing I really like about this one is the changing time signatures. I just like the fact that I cannot intentionally count the rhythm in my head. I love the fact that it makes me think about the music. thinking, oh, what time meter is this in? And actually, like, you know, starting to count things off. So I was listening to the song The Black Box and I was counting the time meter, and I actually noticed that it wasn't like some fancy 7/4s or 5/4 or I don't know 15/16s. Like, it was just a simple 3/4. It was a waltz basically, and I found that to be amazing. 1 2 3 1 2 3. So I can't say I'm a metalhead right now, but I love this album. I think I had a great time listening to it. I appreciated the music, but I actually found myself enjoying it at times, and it's really, really great. I still don't think I really get the entire idea of the heaviness of the music at times, but I'm sure that will come within time, and if not, at least I can appreciate it for what it is. So this is an overall great album, and before we end this section off, I have to tell you my favorite track off this one. So it was a close call, but I think my best, favorite track off this album has to be Melting City. It was exciting for all the right reasons. I had fun listening to it from start to end, and those songs, you know, this song in particular, it's pretty long, and I just had a blast listening to it, to all the different ideas the band came forth and actually put on the table. And this album itself, it all feels very thought out, not improvised as well. It just feels like they knew what they were going for, the entire idea, the concept, and it actually went through with it. And it's an amazing experience hearing an album that you know is so highly productive. So overall, if I had to sum it up, this is a great metal album for non-metal fans. Moving on to the cover of this album, I'm going to move to the side a bit so you can see it better. So the cover itself is really, really aesthetically pleasing. I find it to be a great cover itself, the way it's composed, the two planets or whatever that is, the meteorites, I don't know, and text between them, and everything looks so good. I think one of my complaints for this cover is the choices of colors. I don't think they're that good. For some reason they just don't work for me as well. And I can't really tell you why, but I know there's been another live performance that they've released to the public, and I think they replaced the blue with a yellow, and that instantly looked way better in my opinion. So that's just my personal thoughts about the idea. When it comes to the meaning of the cover itself, I think it really does give off that spacey vibe for that spacey concept album. But for some reason I think it's too relaxed, and it doesn't really emphasize the fact that the music on here can get really intense at times. So to conclude, this album receives a very consistent 7 out of 10. All the songs in this album received a rating of 6 to 8, and it's just amazing seeing how the levels have remained consistent, because behind the scenes you don't know this, but there's a lot of albums I listen to and they can have like one song that is rated a 3 and one song which is rated a 9, and then you take the average and you get to the last score. But I love the fact that this album just has that tight group of scores to it that actually led me to score this one with a 7, and I think that's really good when it comes to having consistent quality. So stay tuned for tomorrow, guys. We will be listening to Script for a Jester's Tear by Marillion. That's a really hard name to say, so I'm glad I nailed it first try. And that's about it. I hope that you enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.